that will interface, how these efforts will interface with FPL, and then what are we going to do about transportation, knowing that that's a pretty big and sort of unique component, because that's not so much about just getting, the grid green, but it's about changing some of our transportation practices and infrastructure as well. So this planning process, I think it was 6 or 8 months by the time we got done with the meetings. This was presented to the commission, and this is kind of the framework that we're using. And it's available on the city's website if you go to the sustainability department section. So some of the research that we came across in that was an emissions analysis for City of Sarasota, community-wide within the city. About roughly 30% of our, roughly a third of the emissions are coming from the residential sector, a little over a third from the commercial sector, and about a third from transportation. So, those kind of being the three key pillars. The city itself, in terms of its municipal operation, it only uses something like, I want to say on the order of like a percent or maybe 2% of the overall slice of the pie in the city of Sarasota. So getting to 100% by 2030 for the city itself, it's good. It's going to help, I think, build some momentum, but it's not really a huge way to move the dial in terms of our emissions. Nevertheless, the city is working hard on its commitments. So some of the things that it's done, that the city itself has committed to, they're looking to work with an FPL program called Solar Together, which is FPL's version of a community solar program, but it would essentially let the city buy subscriptions to solar farms that would cover city operations energy. One of the things that's interesting about the city is they've also discovered that a very large percentage of their overall municipal electric use is coming from streetlights. And a lot of these are old streetlights, they're very glary kind of old ones. I have an astigmatism and they drive me crazy. You can't see with them. But I think it's the high pressure sodium lights. They're very, very energy efficient. A lot of that's old. It's going to be replaced. FPL is doing some of that. The city's doing some of that. They're shifting to LEDs, which are much, much more efficient. And obviously the fall of LED pricing is helping quite a bit. And just as a quick aside, I was supposed to introduce this at the beginning, but we have a petition that we're passing. I'll talk about this in a moment, but we're going to try to get the county on board with these commitments as well. So that's what this petition is for. So feel free to sign that if that sounds worthwhile to you. The city's replacing a lot of their lighting with LEDs. They built a new St. Armand's parking garage, and while I'm not always thrilled to see new parking garage going in, we will note that there is solar installed on that parking garage that will produce about 53,000 kilowatt hours a year, and that's the equivalent emissions of about 90,000 miles driven by an average car. So it was pretty good to get that on the St. Armand's garage. The city's also looking at tightening their building codes to require new construction to be sort of an above baseline level of efficiency, possibly with some kind of solar requirements or incentives. So that's going to be something that we've been involved with. They're going to try to push them to take, I think, stronger action on that. The city's done some work to expedite permitting and do things to help contain soft costs, remove some of those obstacles to residents installing solar. And then this is a big one. The city in July of this past year announced that they're going to convert their entire fleet to EVs within the next 5 years. And so this is going to be on a replacement basis, but it's encouraging. And they're actually going to try to get their trucks included in that as well, because there's increasingly, the truck thing is sort of on the cusp of breaking through, but assuming that happens, the city would change over their pickups as well. So that's going to be good towards this goal, but it's also going to help the city save on maintenance and fuel costs, because if you have an EV, you don't have to get your oil changed, among other things. Pretty simple car. And then lastly, the city's hired a transportation planner, and that was not in direct response to Ready for 100, but I know her pretty well, and she's looking hard at how they're going to be incorporating these goals into into their transportation master plan. So what have we been doing on the community side? The city is trying to do their part. What are we doing? The group Ready for 100 here has worked with some other partner organizations and has organized 2 solar co-ops. Do we have anyone who's participated in one of these co-ops in here? And then in the back, you organized it, so I guess it counts for you. These are pretty cool. It's basically when homeowners work with a solar provider to pool their purchases together and get a discount on group installations. So I think, they've had over 100 rooftop installations as a result of these co-ops, and some of the savings have been pretty significant. I think Lynn said it was around 25% that individual homeowners were saving on rooftop installations just by kind of going with a group of purchase group. So this has been going on throughout the state of Florida. There have been over 45 co-ops, and so that's resulted in nearly $30 million of solar installation just in Florida by people organizing these co-ops. Sarasota County has passed PACE financing, and I think most of the cities have opted in. This lets you pay for energy upgrades or solar installation or storm hardening, and then you pay that back on your property taxes. It's amortized, I think, over 10 years on your property taxes. So it's just a financing option for people. Trying to stay on the Bayfront project to make sure that whatever goes in there is going to be powered by solar. There's been some effort to get some momentum in the business community, as well as in the nonprofit sector, looking at ways to support nonprofits because they're not able to take advantage of the federal tax credit. So they face some unique obstacles. The equity work refers to some efforts with the Newtown Community Redevelopment Agency, and as they update their redevelopment plan, getting them to do some energy planning for the Newtown area. We talked about green building, we talked about transportation, and then the other thing is just the education work that our group's been doing, which has been about 55 community presentations like this one or tabling events over the past 3 years. So for an all-volunteer effort, I'd say pretty decent. So FPL, they're hearing their ratepayers talk about this stuff. They know that their service areas are starting to demand it. So they came out within the past year and announced that they're going to be installing 30 million solar panels by 2030, which would actually make this the largest sort of utility managed solar installation in the world. It's very clear that FPL is not excited about rooftop solar. They do not want you, essentially not getting your electricity from them, so they're very much trying to steer things towards solar farms. And there's a lot of, I think, strong feelings around these topics. My sense is that if we're going to reach these goals, we need both. We're going to need these large installations, especially for people who live in situations where rooftop isn't an option. But we can't give up the right for rooftop solar as well in these more decentralized sources. So it's really going to be important to strike that balance, and that's ultimately going to be a political fight in a lot of ways. Not going to belabor this, but just to take away, with our existing technology, most experts agree that we could get to at least 90% decarbonization of our electricity grid. So that's with wind, solar, and storage just right now. There's going to be pieces of the economy that are going to be tough to decarbonize: steel production, concrete. There's some sticky widgets, as they say out there. But our electricity grid is not that. We have a lot of the technology we need right now to make these transitions possible. So this is according to the good folks at MIT. And just keeping in mind that this is, even if you say, okay, well, maybe climate change won't be that bad, these are really what we call no regrets policies. And then moving to a renewable future is actually good no matter what. We're going to reduce air pollution, which is good, but there's benefits to the local economy. So the jobs, and these are good jobs. These are family wage paying jobs. There are savings for family and businesses when you're not paying FPL as much to cool your home in the summer if you were able to have rooftop. Savings on energy bills from just the energy efficiency gains alone means that you have more money to reinvest in the local economy. You have healthcare savings from reductions in particulate matter deaths, which cause over 70,000 fatalities in the US alone. And we're also going to save taxpayers money from improved bond ratings. And so just a few slides left here. This is really on the what you can do piece of it. So tailpipe emissions, we have reducing tailpipe emissions, reducing energy consumption, increased use of renewable energy, and doing all of those things is how we're going to lower our emissions footprint. So on transportation, what are the things we can do? Obviously, the low-hanging fruit, walk, bike, carpool, public transit. Supporting public projects to improve multimodal transportation. So, maybe a benefit of roundabouts is it lets people walk safely and they don't have to drive. And so maybe we should think about that or just factor that into the discussion. Support land use that's compatible with public transit. This is where I benefit from the meeting kind of having cleared out a little bit. Slightly controversial opinion, we need a little bit more density on our arterial corridors so that we can have effective public transit. It's very difficult being sprawled out Sunbelt, trying to have public transit agencies that can operate with any kind of efficiency at all. So build up Fruitville a little bit, build up 41 a little bit. Let's keep it affordable, keep it attainable. But that sort of low carbon, urbanism is something that's worth exploring. And then if you are a car owner and you're going to be replacing a vehicle, consider replacing it with an electric vehicle. You can find used Nissan Leafs out there that are very reliable and really not that expensive. You got some cash to burn, of course, there's always Tesla. They are very nice cars, I will say. Other tailpipe emissions, this slide I think is interesting just in that it is very, very surprising that running a leaf blower for 30 minutes creates the equivalent nitrogen emissions of driving an F-150 truck nearly 70 miles. What? Operating a commercial lawnmower for an hour is as much as driving a Toyota Camry about 300 miles. So, if you got to upgrade if it's time to replace your lawn equipment, consider electric. If you have landscape crews, maybe they can use electric as well. Planting native plants is a way to just reduce your overall maintenance, pruning, that sort of thing. And then these are some steps you can take to kind of reduce the food miles associated with your diet, supporting your local agriculture and that sort of thing. Upgrading appliances, getting Energy Star windows when it's time to replace your windows, switching to LED lighting. The price on LEDs come down so much over the past decade. The county will provide free assistance for things like sealing your leaky windows and doors. So take them up on that. It's the Hayes-Byron's program out at IFAS. They do a lot of work for homeowners. And then just on Rooftop Solar, noting that the price is about 25% of what it was 10 years ago. Average systems are going in for about $14,000, which gets you a payback of 8 years. So those are pretty decent numbers. And Thomas Edison, he was a fan of solar. He said he put his money on it. So it's a pretty strong endorsement. But as important as all those things are, and I do think individual action is important, if there's one takeaway from this tonight, it's that we actually have to work together as a community. So demanding these sorts of systemic changes at the policy level, trying to change things, both locally, but at the state level, trying to get the utilities to shift, that's only going to happen if we're actually working together. That's not going to be driven by individual consumer choice, as valuable as that can be in some circumstances. So there was a little bit of a cautionary and inspirational tale from Amendment 1 in 2016. Does anybody remember that? Mm-hmm. So this was when the utilities tried to, and you gotta, so we get it to them. They tried to sneak onto the ballot. Well, they got it onto the ballot, but it was a sneakily worded amendment that sounded very pro-solar, but in fact was going to set up a very advantageous regulatory situation for them. And it was discovered what was happening, and I think there was actually some leaked audio from a meeting where they were like, "Hey, can you believe we're like pulling one over on people?" And they, guffaws and pats on the back. And anyway, people got word of it. There was a strong public mobilization against it. The amendment was defeated, but this really did make clear what people had sort of been suspecting all along, which is that the utilities they've been fighting this, and so we really have to work together to make the gains. But when we do work together, it is possible to make those gains. So just staying informed, being involved, the efforts that we're trying to lead here locally. It's not only in Sarasota, but there's an active team in Manatee County as well. These different communities that have past goals are now working together as a statewide network. That's just happened within the past few months, so that's a promising development. And then, in terms of next stops, really thinking about if this is something the city of Sarasota can do, why can't the county? And the opportunities and challenges there are different. It's certainly a larger scale, but there are, the city of Orlando has, certainly well over 1 million people. So if they're doing it, Sarasota County could do it as well. So we'd really like to see that leadership at the county level. And then school districts, they sort of operate outside all of this as independent districts, but they are big users of electricity. And they have school bus fleets that are driving, down our roads every day with diesel, and so there's some room for movement as well. And that's particularly exciting when you consider the energy that there is among the students with the climate strikes and that sort of thing. So that is the presentation in a nutshell, and if there's any, maybe not so much in a nutshell,
we've got a couple questions.
Still writing.
I have a quick question.
Hold on. In order for your question to be on the video, you either have to come up here and speak into a microphone, or I have to read it.
Okay.
And while you're doing that, I want to announce that the meeting's coming up in February. We are going to be off schedule. We're not going to be here for Valentine's Day, okay? So we're going to wait until the week after that, and we're going to be dealing with short-term rentals in neighborhoods. Melanie Goddard's going to be doing that. And in March, we're going to have Sean Sellers and John Thaxton here to talk about better stormwater. Okay. And your question is?
Okay, so I got an email from FPL about solar power, and it said that they have requested for approval for a program. It was filed with Florida Public Service Commission in March of 2019, and they anticipate offering open enrollment in early 2020. This is a kind of solar subscription program, as far as I understand. Do you have any information on the value of this?
Yeah, that is the FPL Solar Together program. So that's the same program that the city of Sarasota is looking to join for its municipal electric source. I mean, it's a way that if it's approved by the Public Service Commission, it'll be a way for homeowners who either cannot or do not install rooftop solar to have their an equivalent amount of their annual electricity usage will be sourced by. There will be solar production in equivalence of their annual electricity usage. So I mean, you're not actually using the same electrons, but you would be offset with solar on an annual basis. So it's a positive development, probably.
I've got a question here. Please discuss paying FPL. I think it's via Arcadia.com, purchasing certificates and for renewables.
Yes, I've come across that a few times, and I could never personally really get to the bottom of it. I mean, it's some sort of renewable credit scheme. I don't say pejoratively, but just it's some sort of arrangement where.
That is my question.
Yeah.
I have been doing this for quite some time.
We can.
I'll be glad to tell you.
Yeah.
I'm no longer armed. Hi. I was turned on to this a couple of years ago. I lived in a very shaded area, and I can't have solar panels, and I can't afford them anyway. And I understand we're under contract to buy our electricity through FPL until something like 2040 or something. I was introduced to Arcadia. There were some people in some of the environmental groups that are doing this. It doesn't save on our energy footprint, but if I'm going to buy electricity from FPL, which I've got to do, doesn't it make sense that the electricity I buy comes from renewables rather than from coal and, you know, fossil fuels? And so the idea is that this doesn't cost me any more. I go on there, I've got a referral code. I've had some other people that have signed up. The first month I joined, they sent me a box of long-lasting light bulbs and, you know, welcome to our renewable plan. And the only difference is I don't save any money on it. I just have the acknowledgement that the power that I am using is coming from renewables rather than from fossil fuels. I've been doing it a couple of years, and I don't see any downside on it. I can give you a referral code. You can sign up. They'll immediately take $25 off of this month's power bill. The only difference is that they tell you you have to pay about a week earlier than you normally pay your bill, and you pay it to Arcadia rather than FPL, and they pay it for you. That's how it works.
Do they tell you what they do with the money?
They buy certificates, and I've got if you look up on their website, arcadia.com.
So my question about it was always just because they're buying, there's probably a market, but you know,
Right.
where they're buying these certificates from, and so where is the solar actually being installed, and sort of what does the back end of it look like? That was just the piece I could never really figure out. Which is not to say that it's a bad program at all. It's different than what they're doing now with Solar Together, where FPL is actually installing their own solar capacity, and that's what you would be getting a subscription of. But Solar Together is going to cost a little bit more. So.
Well, I understand with this, they don't spend money on
Yeah,
marketing.
if you're not on a microphone, it's
you're-
not getting into the video. I want to thank everybody for having the patience to sit through our long discussion about the fish farming, because I think it was really important to squeeze it in, and I appreciate your deferring the time in the beginning of the meeting for that. Thank you very much.
All right.